Your aquatic pets deserve only the best care, and that's exactly what Fly and Vet provides. As Idaho's only mobile aquatics veterinarian, Fly and Vet brings their expertise directly to fish owners across the Treasure Valley. From home aquariums to koi ponds and commercial aquaculture, Fly and Vet can provide on-site diagnosis, treatment, and professional water quality testing. Don't wait to give your aquatic pets the care they deserve. Call 208-260-0327 to schedule an appointment today. You can also check them out on Facebook or visit flyandvet.com. Fly and Vet, bringing professional aquatic services directly to your doorstep. Today on CityCast, Boise. Before our city became the family-friendly capital we enjoy, it was a rowdy western town fueled by gamblers, fortune seekers, and scandals. We're resharing a conversation where Ida History's Mark Iverson tests my knowledge of the wild stories lurking in Boise's past. It's Wednesday, September 10th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. I'm really excited about this show because we're doing something a little different. We're doing a questionnaire game show. How well do I know Boise history?
Right, and I wonder how well I know Boise history.
I wanted to introduce you to the audience and have them get to know you a little bit. So what got you interested in Boise history?
Well, so I started working for Boise Parks and Recreation after I got out of grad school at Boise State. I started working for all things, representing the cemeteries that are controlled by the Parks and Recreation. So Morris Hill, Pioneer Cemetery, and, they kind of steward the Fort Cemetery up Mountain Cove Road. And so I started finding all these stories, and I got really interested in local history. And then I became a member of the Arts and History Department. And I learned all sorts of other stuff. And you really have to kind of dig for it.
So it's not like really, really accessible to people.
No, I mean, it's out there. If you learn a system at the archives or how to use a digital archive for, like, say, the Statesman, obviously, you can find that stuff. But, it's just like learning any system or technology. You get good at it over, a series of years. And so that's what I've kind of perfected in the last decade.
And you run several Boise history tours. What made you want to start doing that?
For the Arts and History Department, I led tours. It was sort of the arts side and the history side, and we talk about what was there prior. And I'm always been interested in crazy things myself. And so when people wanted to know that, I was like, oh, there's some here. And then I quit and started a business, Ida History.
Wow.
And so, I do tours, and lo and behold, people pay for them continuously. So that was pretty cool, so that's what I've kind of continued to do.
Yeah. And that's something that I thought was so interesting, is that Boise kind of has this presentation of being like, oh, just small town, like, just home style values. But like, there is a lot under the surface that it was just frankly unhinged that was going on in Boise back in the day. And
right.
So that's definitely why I wanted to play this game. Let's talk about some of these really wild things that were happening.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's endless. It's endless. And this was one of the safer cities, at least after the Wild West period.
All right, well, let's jump in. So just so everyone knows, Mark has prepared some multiple choice questions. I asked for multiple choice because I'm not going to know these people's names, I think. And we're going to see how well I know Boise history. Maybe not the, who was this governor history, but more of this kind of unhinged or just really wild stories from Boise's history.
Okay, so I was going to start early on. Before Boise was even here, there's some interesting tales. And so one of the first ones was, what group of Euro-Americans first came through the Boise Valley and when? You got A, Lewis and Clark in 1805, B, the Astorians in 1811, and C, Benjamin Bonneville in 1835.
Oh, so part of me wants to say Lewis and Clark because that's kind of like the main answer for all through this area, but I'm nervous it was someone else. I'm going to go Lewis and Clark. I might regret it.
Wrong.
Oh.
B, the Astorians. So
okay, I don't even know who the Astorians are.
Well, you've heard of Astoria, Oregon, right?
Yeah.
In 1811, they're the first group. The about 8 guys come through here. First, a guy named Donald McKenzie, and then a guy named William Price Hunt in 1811. They're starving, and they come up and over the crest, like where, well, Bonneville Point is, and then through what is the Barber area. And the Shoshone feed them some dogs. The historians were, failed fur venture, actually, in the end, but they founded Astoria, Oregon, where the Goonies are famous for.
Oh, fascinating.
Right.
Okay, well, I didn't get that one right. Let's hop to the next one and hope I do a little better.
Okay. The next one is, what was the name of the miner who first discovered gold in the Boise Basin on August 2nd, 1862? And the Boise Basin being, where Idaho City is in the surrounding mountainous area.
Okay.
So A, Moses Splawn, B, Clem McSpitty, and C, George Grimes.
Okay, the McSpitty name is kind of fun. This again, I'm feeling George Grimes. I'm going to say George Grimes. I hope I'm more right this time.
Correct.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. All right. George Grimes. Thanks, George. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So Grimes Creek is, obviously named after him.
Oh, okay.
He finds gold on the 2nd. They have a fairly large group, but they're not armed well enough. He's with his other co-leader of this group named Moses Splawn. And George Grimes finds this gold, has a prospect hole, and then a few days later, basically, he's shot and killed. Some say by the Shoshone, who definitely didn't want, they knew that when white guys found gold, bad things probably follow. Like They knew there's a network of information. And so anyway, they kind of had to defend themselves for a while and then skedaddle out of there, but not before George Grimes was shot and killed. And they basically kicked him into a prospect hole that he had dug. And he's still up at the top of this mountain, buried up there, the weirdest place for a cemetery, at the top of Grimes Creek, overlooking Garden Valley. And yeah, just on the crest of this ridge is this little cemetery with a few people buried in it, and he's one of them.
Wow. So maybe finding gold was not such a win as he thought it would be?
No, I guess, I think for that day, he was probably pretty happy and excited and then scared because they were under attack. And so, the rest of his group, they also said that perhaps his partners killed him, but there's no solid evidence, just a lot of smoke, right? But no fire. But they went back to Walla Walla and they ran out of here. And then they came back in force, 100 plus guys, armed to the teeth. And they founded what was called Hoggum, because other miners named that area Hoggum because they were all hogging gold, essentially. But they built kind of a fort out of just logs that they, tipped vertically and, just planted in the ground. And they started mining in that area. And that was called Pioneerville now, in the Basin. Just one of the earliest communities.
Summit Innovation Lab invites your child to be part of their first LEGO League team, where fun and learning collide. Through hands-on projects, kids will build and code LEGO robots and then take on exciting competitions that encourage creativity and real-world problem solving. Through these challenges, Summit Innovation Lab will help your child strengthen collaboration and critical thinking skills while also learning to code in a fun way. Guided by knowledgeable coaches and surrounded by a supportive community, kids will discover what it means to be innovative leaders, problem solvers, and a team player, all while having a blast. Head to summitinnovationlab.com to sign up for the league today. I'm excited to share that I've partnered with Huel, Huel, because their Black Edition powder has become my favorite lunchtime solution. If you're like me, lunch can feel like the hardest meal to get to during a busy day. So instead of grabbing fast food or reaching for a snack, I can mix up a quick shake and know I'm getting something that actually sustains me. Each serving of Huel Black Edition is a complete meal with 40 grams of plant-based protein and 27 vitamins and minerals. It's gluten-free, has no added sugar, and for less than $3 a meal, it's convenient and budget-friendly. I've been enjoying the vanilla flavor. It's tasty, satisfying, and keeps me full for hours. And if you're looking for an easy way to get your daily greens, Huel just released their Daily Greens Ready to Drink. No powders, no mixing, just a sparkling super greens drink that's refreshing and ready to go. Try Huel with 15% off for new customers today using my code Boise at huel.com/Boise. That's huel.com/Boise. Fuel your best performance with Huel today. Okay, jumping back in, I've gotten one right. So I feel really good about the one question I've got right. Let's jump back in and see if I can keep up my, 1 out of 2 streak going and can get more questions right.
Okay, so next, what group of women most helped Boise City develop economically from 1863 to roughly 1920? A, nuns. B, social reformers. C, prostitutes.
Ooh, just because it's on here, it feels like it's going to be prostitutes or sex workers. I know it's historical. I'm not sure. I'm going to say sex workers.
Yeah, by today's standard, yeah, sex workers. That's it. That's true. I think it's not just Boise history, but in all history, especially in the West, prostitution was a big kind of economic boon to any mining town or mining supply center. And so, yeah, here in Boise, you kind of had the period from 1863 to 1888 or so. It was kind of everywhere, right? All over downtown. But after 1890, they pushed it into the alleys, right where City Hall is. It was called Levy's Alley, roughly speaking, from 6th Street. They called it Garrison early on because it went to the fort, and then to 8th Street. And then on the alley that was between Idaho Street and Bannock, that was also one. So like where the Chan Lee building is today with Flying M Coffee, all the way down to 8th. That was where the brothels were. And then you would go in the alley and you would walk up some stairs, always on the 2nd floor, never really on the bottom, and you couldn't access these places from the front. That's where stores were. And so, yeah, a lot of the well-known businessmen, and not all of them, but some of them definitely owned these properties and knowingly rented them out to madams and pimps and brothels. So this was a common thing.
What are some ways that it helped Boise to develop economically to have these businesses?
Well, just the rental properties, the businessmen would make a lot of money off of the rent and then put that into other ventures. Graft really helped fund the police department early on because they didn't have a very good budget. And so illicit activity and the paying of bribes helped large minority of the police department function. Wholesale liquor stores and wine stores would basically sell large quantities of alcohol to the brothels, and then the women would push these drinks onto the johns, and they would make a lot of money that way.
I'm 2 for 3. I'm ready for another one.
Yeah, you're doing good. So what prompted many of Boise's well-to-do families to move east of town along what was then called Old Hot Springs Road, starting in 1891? So A, they wanted to be closer to the Idaho State Penitentiary. B, they wanted riverfront property. Or C, Boise Artesian Hot and Cold Water Company tapped into the geothermal springs.
Ooh, I feel like it's going to be C. I feel like there was some economic boon or something elite there that they wanted. And I think it was the geothermal hot springs.
Correct. So most of the wealthy had lived along 9th Street and Grove. They had these beautiful canals and orchards. But then 1891, they start to develop what is called the natatorium down at the east end of Warm Springs, where Adams Elementary is today. They still have the same pool there, the natatorium swimming pool. That was refinished, but that was basically the hole where they had their geothermal spring. But they had this big edifice that looked like a cathedral just made of wood with a hot springs in it. All sorts of different rooms for like smoking rooms for the gents. But that road, Warm Springs, was called Old Hot Springs Road in the Oregon Trail days, and then a little after, because, they knew of the hot springs. The Shoshone had used that. The Bannock had used that as a kind of a religious area, right where the old pen is, up underneath Table Rock, because, you had Table Rock there, but you also had that area was all filled with hot springs. And so they, if there was a wounded warrior, they would go there and either recuperate or die in this spiritual place and be buried up in the hills right above where the old pen is. That whole area is a cemetery. And so, but people knew it was there. And so when they drilled down and they tapped into it. They used it to heat the homes that would be built there in Warm Springs. First home ever heated was the C.W. Morehouse in America with geothermal water.
Oh, wow. Right here in Boise?
Yeah. It's a very cool, creepy looking mansion on Warm Springs. But anyway, and then all these other mansions started to develop and continue, even till today, that guy who built a castle like a decade ago out there on that property.
Wow. Yeah. I was going to say the Boise Castle.
Right. It's a good one. Okay. What was cleared to make room for the Idaho State Capitol starting around 1908? A schoolhouse, A. B, the old Capitol building. C, a residential neighborhood.
Ooh. A schoolhouse would be poetic considering how a lot of our legislators feel about education right now. I'm going to say a residential neighborhood because really, if they just took out people's houses for the Capitol, also there's something just ironic about that. So I'm going to go with residential neighborhood.
You're actually partially correct. This was a trick question.
Oh, no. Okay.
It's all three.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I set you up. I'm sorry.
Partial credit. I'll give partial credit.
Where the lawn is and the west side of the west, I don't want to say branch, but wing of the Capitol is, that used to be the first central school building. It was a cool looking building. It had like a cupola at the top with a bell in it. Very, it had some wood on it. It was very pretty. Anyway, yeah, that was the first schoolhouse, which they then moved. And there was another, the central schoolhouse number 2 was put in back on 7th Street, basically behind the Capitol. And then where the basically the east wing was, that was where you had the first Capitol. The territorial Capitol built in 1884. And basically it was there's pictures of the old Capitol right next to the new Capitol as they're building the cupola of the new Capitol. And before they tore down the old one. And so, they're very different building. I think one's Norman architecture, very kind of big, kind of dominating architecture. And then, the Capitol is more rounded and whatnot. But one funny thing about the old Capitol building is that there was no toilet. There was no plumbing whatsoever. So during the middle of meetings and, legislative sessions, they'd have to, pause things so people could go to the bathroom, and they'd be in there for a long time sometimes. So it was kind of funny that that's where, it was this beautiful looking building, but there was no commode. And then right where the park is in front, I think it's Andrus Park now, but Capitol Park, that was all residential neighborhood, right? And before it was a residential neighborhood, it was just sagebrush. And so there are stories of, when legislators are going to their session, there are cows grazing, there's livestock right out in front of the Capitol. It was one of the earliest photos date back to 1882.
That sounds very Western. The cows and the legislators.
It was. And there's, part of Boise's history is just trying to Eastern themselves up. They're basically trying to establish an actual functioning town, and they did, out of a very rustic and rough beginning. But I guess that's the story of most towns.
Okay, I haven't been keeping track, but I think I've gotten a few. I'm like halvesies for my Boise history. I have like half of them. I think that's pretty good.
You're a solid.
Yes. All right.
I gave you a trick question though, so that doesn't count. Maybe you got that one right. What more than anything led to the development of Boise's first suburbs? A, barbed wire. B, refrigeration. Or C, streetcar lines.
Ooh, logical me wants to say streetcar lines, but I think it'd be fun if the answer was barbed wire. I'm going to go with streetcar lines.
Correct.
Oh, all right. Okay.
The streetcar lines, Richmond, Virginia was the first one in 1881. And then, 10 years later, we had basically the second one, and it went down to the natatorium on now Warm Springs. But that was the beginning of something where, You had suburbs developing. The Arnold's Edition started in 1882, but it didn't continue. And then when you get streetcar service, it starts to develop. And then the Residue Edition, and then the rest of the North End, Hyde Park, as these branches of these tracks go out throughout the Boise Valley, you get settlement, right? And so you had a lot of businessmen, that would basically invest in the streetcar lines as it went down Old Valley Road, which is now State Street, and they would sell off portions of their property that they owned out there. And that's how they made their money off of the property. So financing the streetcars was just a way to sell their subdivided lands.
So as it was more convenient for people to live further away from the center of town, then we began to get the suburbs here.
Right. And so that's, Eagle really started to develop after the birth of the streetcar service. And so you get Eagle, which it wasn't Eagle, but before, 1903 or 4. But you had the development of downtown Eagle when the trolley came right down Old State Street, and people would talk about how urbanites would go out to Eagle and shoot, ducks on Eagle Island, and Eagleites, suburbanites would go down into Boise for a day on the town, and so people would ride what became the Boise Valley Loop, or interurban, all the way out to Caldwell, and then you could ride it back through Ustick and the Boise Bench, and then back down into town. And so it was this huge kind of development for the area that lasted until 1928, when buses came, to be used dominantly.
Okay, so you teased me with a question about the last president who came to Boise. I definitely want to make sure we get to that one. I am interested in when the last president came to Boise. It's been a while.
Well, it wasn't like the last, I think we had Obama, and I forget who else came here, but, I would say arguably our greatest president. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay. Is that a clue?
Oh, shoot, it probably is, but I'll ask you anyway. So what president basically came back or out here in 1937, and why did he come? And so I first said A, Calvin Coolidge for fly fishing, B, Herbert Hoover to inspect the Capitol, or C, FDR to tour WPA projects from the New Deal that were completed in Boise.
Okay, the president in 1937 would have been FDR. I think based on your political leanings, I'm going to go with FDR.
Right, correct.
Okay, all right. I got to finish strong getting the last question right.
Yeah, your history. FDR was on his way out to the Olympic National Forest in Washington to see this huge lodge that was being built out there with WPA funds. But he wanted to see like North Junior High in the North End, right? He wanted to take a look at that. He went out in a car basically and toured for about an hour and a half. And he went by Roosevelt Elementary in the East End, but that was named after Teddy. And then he went throughout the North End and drove back, and he gave a speech at the intersection outside of the Capitol. So we're talking Bannock and Capitol is where he gave that speech. Thousands and thousands of people, some say upwards of 20,000 people came in to see the president speak. There's these pictures where they're all sitting there, on buildings that are no longer there and watching the president. And, he is basically saying Boise's one of his favorite towns. And so a lot of people believe that he just absolutely loved Boise. But then you look at all his other stump speeches, and he says that at every town that he goes to. So,
like a politician.
Right. A lot of politics, and just that too.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. This was really fun. I didn't get a final score, but I think I did like passing, low C. I think a low C for my Boise history.
I think you got most of them right, but it was like, 7. And I don't even know how many we did, but at least got, I'd say a C, solid C.
Perfect. I'll take it. C's get degrees. That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe to our Hey Boise newsletter for more local stories. We'll be back tomorrow morning to find out where to find the city's best chicken wings. You won't want to miss it.